Hello, everyone. Welcome to Secur IT, where we discuss all things cybersecurity, people, trends, and products. Thank you for joining us on our continuing journey. Today, we go back to our core. We're going to go deep into cybersecurity, ransomware, the anatomy of a couple of public incidents, including MoveIt. We've come bearing good news, however. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Joining me today is Brett Callow, threat analyst at Emsisoft. Welcome, Brett.
Hi, and thanks for inviting me on, Philip.
It's my honor to have you here, and we've got some eager listeners waiting to break this down. So, Brett, we traditionally talk about how you got here, and I'm sure there are a couple of terms that are not subject to public inquisition. So, however, in the interest of our listeners who are anxious to make a successful career in cybersecurity, can you talk about two or three key career moves that got you here?
Yeah, I'm really not the best example for this. I followed a non-traditional path into cybersecurity, and my background is difficult to discuss for various reasons. As I said, we're better avoiding this subject altogether, unfortunately.
Understand? Today, there is a gap. There's a huge gap between cybersecurity professionals that, we need and what's available. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on just trending in terms of getting enough people uh, to button down the hatches, so to speak? Some words of encouragement to our future workforce.
Yeah, the country absolutely needs to find ways to increase the size of the cybersecurity workforce. It's a critical and very challenging problem that does have real world impact. What the solution is to that, I really don't know. And the problem seems to be becoming worse for a number of years. And I really have no clue how to go about solving that.
Okay. So we're all in two. I'm hoping we'll get a few more answers as we move forward here, Brett. Let's talk about cybersecurity trends. How do you see our world moving forward? We're talking about ransomware, we're talking about incidents where it's a constant cat and mouse game. Um, from where you are, what does trending look like?
It is a constant cat and mouse game, and if you put the cybersecurity industry in the role of the cat, the mouse is kicking our butt to Austin, unfortunately. Security-wise, we seem to be in as bad a position, if not worse, than we have ever been in. The UK, for example, issued a report fairly recently, but in the last few days, that stated ransomware attacks were at record levels. And that's really not a good thing. The world government have turned their attention to ransomware. They have increasingly been looking for ways to crack this problematic nut. And they have obviously not succeeded. The problem isn't going away. It's actually getting worse.
It definitely is. Technologies are vast and varied. As we talk about the next few questions that I'm going to pitch your way, let's talk about the company that you work for. We'll then drill down to a couple of incidents, and then that's what I can't wait for. And then, of course, our world is fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but we come bearing gifts. So we'll talk about the solutions, what organizations and CISOs who are listening to this session today can do. So let's begin at the top. Emsisoft, what do you do? Uh,
Yeah,
please.
Emsisoft is primarily an endpoint protection company. We make antivirus, we make EDR. So we really try and stop ransomware attacks from succeeding and other cyber attacks from succeeding as well. We also have particular expertise in ransomware, and that's possibly what we're actually best known for. We find ways to decrypt encrypted files without organizations needing to pay the ransom. We basically look to find weaknesses in the encryption routines that the bad guys use and exploit those vulnerabilities.
So not just another anti-malware, antivirus endpoint company. You do things well. You've got your secret sauce. You've got really secret sauce. You've made the news on a couple of incidents, which actually opens the door for me to have a discussion with you. So let's talk about the MoveIt incident and what can you share?
Yeah, in the MoveIt incident, we've actually had no involvement in that particular one. We have simply been tracking the statistics primarily for research purposes. And those statistics really are quite alarming. As of today, there are around about 1,100 organizations that have been affected by MoveIt and approaching 60 million individuals. So this is an absolutely huge event that is going to have a profound impact. Lots and lots of very sensitive data has leaked onto the dark web, and cyber criminals will invariably be looking for ways to use that.
Um, a number that and I'm not sure if it's attributed to you, but the individuals affected were 17.5 million, if I remember right. It's some crazy number?
And that may have been the number several weeks ago. It now
Wow.
stands at almost 60 million.
Wow.
Important note there as well, as I said, around about 1,100 organizations have been affected that we know about so far, but only just over 100 of those organizations have said how many of their customers were affected, how many individuals. And from those 100 and something disclosures, they alone add up to that almost 60 million. So there are still around about 1,000 organizations that need to confirm how many individuals were impacted.
Amazing.
So the numbers could absolutely skyrocket over the coming week.
And it's cliche for us to constantly talk about the attempts that were made and the amount of breaches that happened as we are now. But let's move on to some good news, right? Let's talk about Kaseya, Revo. Let's talk about um, again. I am cautious, and I have been briefed to stay within what's on public domain. So the floor is yours, Brett.
Okay, we can work in two ways when it comes to decrypting ransomware. Firstly, um, we look for vulnerabilities in the encryption routine, and that, if we find one, can enable us to help organizations recover their files without needing to pay the ransom. That's not always possible. In fact, it's only possible in a minority of cases where the criminals have actually made a mistake, where there's a bug in their code. That's not normally the case. But in those cases, if organizations pay, we can extract the decryption key from the decryptor the criminals supply and put that into our own tooling, which does the decryption job faster, better, and more safely than the tool the criminals supply. In the Kaseya case, they obtained a decryption key by unspecified means, and we put that key into our own tooling, which enabled them to help their customers recover their data.
And this is no mean feat. These are complex keys, and if it was something easily said and done with a decent amount of computing power, would still take a considerable amount of time. So I want to reiterate and ensure that our users heard us right. You can extract decryption keys and use it to decrypt data, restore, and thwart ransomware attacks.
Yeah. And to do that more safely than would otherwise be possible using the criminal tool.
That is extremely impressive. Um, I'm at a point, we're about halfway through our conversation, and the proverbial fork in the road appears. I want to go behind the mind of the threat actor, right? I want your comments on that, as well as we're going to talk about small businesses, medium-sized businesses, SMBs, and what they can do. So let's look at the bad guy first to kind of frame our conversation on the solution. Um, Threat actor psychology. Um, Talk to me.
Yeah, they're a very interesting subject. And if you can get some inclination into their motivation, that can help you understand how they may react to a particular situation. For example, most ransomware operations are purely financially motivated, and that means they work in very predictable ways. They all do the same thing. They all respond to offers in the same type of way. But there are some groups that operate differently. For example, there was a somewhat hobbyist ransomware operator. They were after money, but they were also motivated by the lol, and they were hacking as much for fun as they were for financial gain, and that made them far less predictable. And they would spend a lot more time trying to compromise network than a traditional ransomware operator would. And that was purely because they uh, didn't care how much time they spent from them. They weren't only trying to make money. And that also creates problems for defenders. Traditional defenses and defense strategies may not work in that case. If people hammer away for long enough, they may find a gap that enables them to get in. And similarly, the demands they make may not be predictable. You could see some strange things sometimes. One operation, for example, asked a video card producer to open source their drivers and remove the throttling from them. And that's the type of thing that organizations probably don't have in their playbook. If they know how to deal with cash demands, that's something that they will have planned for. But very peculiar demand, not covered by their playbook.
Insightful. It's the ones that are doing this for the thrill of the chase, um, that are probably a little more dangerous than the ones looking for the bounty um, at the end of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. They are less predictable.
So let's come bearing some gifts for all the CISOs and CIOs and CTOs listening. And I might influence this a little bit. Usually, when I ask this question of my guests, it's as always back to the basics, right? It's do your backups and do change your passwords and everything else. Fair warning that I'm going to test that premise as we look at the future of cybersecurity. But staying in the present, uh, Brad, small businesses, medium sized businesses, heck, even large sized businesses, all a matter of perception as to what you look at to define and put businesses or judge businesses and put them in categories. But normally there are basic tenets to operation. And I'm going to combine my question here. What should businesses be concerned about? Steps, simple or otherwise, to improve security.
I'm going to disappoint you here and say it does come down to those basics. Somebody at the UK NCSC recently made a statement that I thought was extremely accurate. They said that cyber attacks are primarily about the monetization of vulnerabilities. And to combat them, the best way is to get rid of those vulnerabilities. And that's absolutely right. Most ransomware attacks and most other cyber attacks succeed because of security failing. They are avoidable. Doing the basics, using multi-factor authentication everywhere it can and should be used, patching your system, doing those things will make you far more secure than you currently are.
And far from disappointing me, hearing you say this adds, tremendously, tremendous flavor of credibility to something that we've been talking about for years. It's uncanny as to, wherever the person I'm talking to is in this entire ecosystem of cybersecurity, it comes back to backups and multi-factor authentication, seeing some things, being aware.
And the truth of the matter is that most cyber attacks are preventable. They do not need to succeed. And if they weren't succeeding so easily and so frequently, attackers would be less incentivized. We would be altering the economic cybercrime. And this is really something that we as an industry need to deal with. We cannot continually push the blame onto end users for what's effectively the industry's failing. If lots of companies aren't using multi-factor authentication, why not? Is it because it's too hard? Is it because it's too costly? What's the reason? We have to remove whatever the disincentives are to good security.
Agreed. And let's take this conversation forward and look into the future. Um, we're dealing with millennials now who are the future of the workforce, if they aren't already the present workforce, who are saying, why do I need to change my password every 90 days? Just do it. You know who I am. We're talking about AI playing a huge role in cybersecurity, both for the good and for the bad. It's speeding up things. We're talking about quantum computing, which is probably going to make uh, AI and its influences on cybersecurity look archaic. And that's coming up maybe in a couple of years. We're talking about human nature, Brad. I mean, if the first guy that rubbed two Flintstones together got a spark and then promptly burned himself, passed that news on to eons of generations, why do we have so many people in the unit, right? Such as with cybersecurity. The first guy that gets a ransomware attack says, hey, look, these are the mistakes I made, go fix it. And yet, we're up against human nature. People will click on stuff, do stuff. People will prioritize different stuff. So here we are. We're in a world where we've got to deal with people. We love them. We love to hate them. We've got the tools. We keep talking about going back to the basics. And you're right. The industry has to step it up to be able to provide us a solid umbrella of protection and not necessarily leave it to the individual. So now my question, something as simple as, why do I even need multi-factor authentication? You can see me, you can scan me, you know the speed, rhythm, and cadence in which I type. You've got a retina, go figure it and let me in. And let me in. Don't give me carte blanche to the entire organization. Let me in to only the files that I need. Don't just open the front door. And you've heard these conversations time and time again. So dream with me for a minute and let's talk about what you see as the future of cybersecurity.
Yeah, and to just touch on what you said, we are starting to move away from traditional passwords and lean more on biometrics. And that enables us to create phishing resistant multi-factor authentication. And ultimately, that will be a huge step in the right direction. But you can also guarantee that the bad guys will find ways to adapt as well. And the game of cat and mouse will be constantly ongoing. There is no way of avoiding that, unfortunately.
Thank you. That is absolutely true. Thank you very much for your insight. One last question, and I tried at the beginning. I am tenacious, and I'm going to circle back. Fair warning, back to you. So we talked about the psychology of the bad guy. Let's talk about the psychology of the good guy. What drives you? What are your influences? Your career views, your mantra, your core values. Um, as an inspiration to our listeners, what makes you so successful?
Yeah, I still get a thrill from what I do, even though I have been doing it for a very long time. And it is simply that sense of satisfaction of doing the right thing or getting wins that keeps driving me forward. It's as simple as that.
Well said, Brett. The true good deed is the good deed done that no one knows about. And
Absolutely.
and here you are. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you for an amazing conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this episode of Secure IT as I continue the cybersecurity discussions with vendors, customers, end users, employees, and influencers, learning from their insights and knowledge. You know where to find us, wherever podcasts exist. Also, a gentle reminder to direct message me on LinkedIn or Twitter with feedbacks, questions, comments, and kudos. Thanks again, and see you next month.